Well, guys, we are back for another video. We want to get into this Sean Diddy Combs trial. As you guys know, he has been sentenced to 4 years and 2 months in prison. Now, I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think that that was sufficient? Do you think it was enough time? Or do you feel like justice was served? Or do you feel that the judge was biased? If you guys listen to what was reported, the judge used the word coercion many times, but if you paid attention to the trial, he was found not guilty of coercion. Okay, let me get that word correct. Well, being that he was found not guilty of coercion, why does the judge keep using that word? So many are thinking this judge was just biased and just didn't like Sean Diddy Combs the whole entire time. Keep in mind, he was ultimately convicted of the 2 Mann Act charges and still had to stay in jail the entire time, was never given any type of bail. Well, let me know what you guys think. We're going to get into this video. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel and also make sure you guys are liking the video.
Please, I don't have any time for any gossip now. Eh? Yes.
And let's kind of jump right in, guys. So what we have learned is that Sean Diddy Combs' attorneys are going to be filing for an appeal. And let's kind of get into what the lead attorney had to say.
That the judge acted as a 13th juror, yes, one that we did not choose. Yeah, we are planning to appeal.
I want to hear them, bro.
We are planning to appeal. We think we have strong bases to appeal.
Yeah.
The strongest basis is that the jury reached a verdict on coercion. It found there was not coercion, and I think the judge said coercion today as a basis for a sentence at least a dozen times. We think that that is unconstitutional.
Yeah.
We think that a jury verdict should mean more than our jury's verdict seems to mean. And so we are planning to appeal.
Absolutely. Filed a cross appeal. What would happen in that regard if they filed a cross appeal and then Sean Diddy Combs get a higher sentence?
He would not get a higher sentence, and they're not gonna cross appeal. We're gonna appeal. We think we're right, and they'll respond to the appeal, and it'll be decided by the Second Circuit as soon as.
Tell us about the conversation you had with your client after the sentencing.
Consensual. The judge clearly thought the sexual encounters weren't consensual.
Because he's biased.
Make of his remarks.
He's biased.
I'm happy to go. So we think that's just absolutely inconsistent with the jury's verdict. I mean, the jury's verdict was resoundingly clear. There was no sex trafficking. There was no racketeering. Everything was consensual. Everything was adult, which is why he was convicted only of the prostitution offense. What we feel happened today was that the judge acted as a 13th juror, yes, one that we did not choose, and that he second-guessed the jury's verdict.
Well, at least.
Okay, guys, so that's pretty much what they are going to appeal on, that basis right there. Because if you guys were watching to, anything that was being reported with regards to the final sentencing, the judge referenced coercion. And it's like, wait a minute, he was not found guilty of coercion. But what the attorney is saying is it seems like the judge did not respect the jury's decision, which is very interesting because when I read some of these comments, it seems like a lot of people are just not respecting the jury's decision, which is kind of crazy because that is what we got to go with. And it just seems like people wanted him to be guilty so bad that when he was not, it seems like they did not respect the jury's decision. But people have to be careful with that because when it's happening to one person and now You have situations where people are having jury trials and the judge is not respecting the jury's decision. That is a problem. So what's going to happen right now is they're going to file an appeal and they could get the entire conviction overturned. Well, let's get into it, guys.
Hi there, everybody. I'm Deborah Roberts, and thank you so much for being with us and streaming with us. Tonight on Burden of Proof, the case against Diddy, a judge sentencing Seancombs to 4 years and 2 months in prison after the hip-hop mogul begged for mercy, essentially, in court. Right before the judge's decision, the 55-year-old stood before the court saying he had been stripped down to nothing, that he has nobody to blame but himself. Combs was convicted, you may remember, in July on the lesser prostitution-related charges in his sex trafficking and racketeering trial. Now, during the court today, he specifically addressed that hotel surveillance video so many people have seen where he's assaulting then-girlfriend cassieventura, apologizing to her today directly, calling that video disgusting and despicable. The judge in the case also took into consideration a letter from the prosecution's star witness, cassieventura, who wrote that she still has nightmares about what she calls the most traumatic and horrifying chapter in her life. Ventura also saying that she fears swift retribution if Combs walks free, so much so that she moved her family out of the New York area. There is so much to this case, so much to break down. And joining us later for a reaction is a former makeup artist to cassieventura who testified against Combs. And we're also going to have a prison consultant who has worked with high-profile inmates on how he preps clients for time in federal prison. And we'll ask him to weigh in on that business class that Combs has been teaching behind bars. Lots to talk about today, but we're going to begin first with ABC News Chief Investigative Correspondent 𝐸𝐿 He's been on this trial from the very beginning in the courtroom and certainly was there today throughout. He joins us live outside the federal courthouse in Manhattan. Aaron, Seancombs was sentenced to 50 months, just over 4 years. What was that moment like for him in court? What was his reaction when he heard that?
Deb, Seancombs was expressionless. He was sitting on his hands as the judge imposed the sentence, telling him that his lifetime of good works could not erase the conduct that we all plainly saw as he was violent with cassieventura and others. And the judge said he wanted to send a message with his sentence that violence against women will be taken seriously. As the courtroom cleared out, though, Combs turned to his family. He said, "I'm sorry. I love you." I was here at court during an earlier hearing when Combs seemed to expect that he might get incarcerated for this, even though he asked for release under time served. And he told his family at that time last week, Deb, that whatever happens, I'll deal with it. And his family had been tearful. Each of his 6 children telling the judge, crowding around the podium, taking turns, that they needed their father home. They begged for his release so that the family could rebuild. But the judge said there is a light at the end of the tunnel for the Combs family, that they can reunite, that he can become the kind of person he told the court he wants to be for his family, for his community, but just not yet. First, he must serve that time in prison.
Right. And an emotional reaction, not only just from his family, but even one of his lawyers was fairly emotional, Aaron. Earlier in the hearing, he asked to show a produced video of his life achievements that obviously was probably meant to sway the judge, to help him see him as a human being, a father. How did that play in court?
It was a documentary-style video with a movie soundtrack, and it showed Seancombs as a doting father, playing with his children, as a philanthropist, running the New York City Marathon and doing other charitable works, mourning Kim Porter. And many of his attorneys said losing loved ones. His father was murdered. Kim Porter got sick and died. Had a profound impact on Seancombs, not to excuse his behavior, but to try and explain that this is someone with clear psychological problems who needs not more time behind bars, but who needs professional help. And his attorneys said that jail or prison would not rehabilitate Seancombs, that he needs professional therapy outside of prison.
Right. What about now, Aaron? What next? I mean, there are some who are going to say this was very lenient, and I'm sure for Seancombs, this was more than he was expecting. What's next for him?
In the last 10 minutes or so.
He's going to return to MDC in Brooklyn, and the Bureau of Prisons will decide where he should ultimately spend his 4-year prison term. And his attorneys say they may well appeal to try and get that sentence reduced. Combs has already been in jail a year. He'll get credit for time served. He must also pay a $500,000 fine imposed by the judge. That's the largest allowed. This was going to be justice either way in some ways, Deb. Either he didn't do anything terribly wrong. He was acquitted of his most serious crimes that he was charged with, and he could have gotten off with time served, and that would have been justice for Combs. But the judge saw it differently, that he needed to be held accountable for the violence that he committed.
Yeah, so many reactions here. Aaron Katersky, thank you as always. And a lot of reactions to this decision today, including from 𝐃𝐨𝐴𝐵𝐵𝐿𝐼, who had testified in this case. In a statement from her attorney, she said, while nothing can undo the trauma caused by Combs, the sentence imposed today recognizes the impact of the serious offenses he committed. Milo Morales, who was 𝐃𝐨𝐴𝐵𝐵𝐿𝐼's former makeup artist, was also called to the stand by prosecutors, and she testified about a 2010 incident when Combs allegedly assaulted Cassie in their hotel suite. Well, Combs's lawyers highlighted on cross-examination that Morales did not directly see the assault and showed the jury these exhibits of Cassie with makeup done by Morales. She clearly had a lot to think about in this case. And joining me now is Mila Morales. Mila, thank you so much for being with us during what I'm sure is a very emotional day for you. What are your feelings at this moment after hearing the sentence?
Well, it's been a very, very stressful year for me just watching this all play out. And I really don't know what to think or feel about it. I'm just really disappointed as to, I've known for 25 years and we're here and he's going to jail. I just feel so much. It's just a very sad day.
Mila, he spoke out for the first time today. He did not speak during the trial, but today Combs tearfully apologized to Cassie, saying that he was broken to his core. He also said he was apologizing to other victims of domestic violence, taking responsibility for his actions, really talking about himself and how he felt that he was responsible, nobody to blame but him. What do you think about his statement in court?
Well, I don't always believe what Sean would say. I hope he's remorseful. I hope he's apologetic. And like I said, I don't know where we are right now in this place.
And there's more to come, we know, because this case will continue on and there are going to be civil suits. You've been part of this high profile case. This is a man who was accused of great violence, intimidation. This clearly has not been easy for you and to be a part of this trial and to testify. Many people talked about being fearful. How has this impacted your life?
It has impacted my life because I've known Sean for 25 years. And I've known Cassie since she was a teenager. And I used to travel the world with Kim Porter and Sean. And, I just think that a man with so much power, I wish that he would have done something better with it rather than here we are seeing him in court. Like I said, 25 years later, it's just a sad
difficult
story.
Time.
It's really difficult. Yeah.
And you faced him in the courtroom too. Tell me a little bit about the sentencing today. I mean, I'm sure that there are plenty of people who feel maybe it's an insult to some women, in this case, particularly Cassie. Does it close a chapter for you, or what are your feelings about the finality of today?
I feel like it does close a chapter for me. However, I just feel very defeated, and I feel defeated for the victims that he's damaged. He's damaged so many lives, and I hope, like I said, I hope he's remorseful, and I hope he is sorry for what he's done to these people, because this is going to impact the rest of their lives.
Well, it clearly has impacted yours and so many others. And we wish you the best and hope that, as you said, that maybe you can sort of move forward. Milo Morales, thank you so much for being with us today. Really appreciate it. Well, now that Seancombs has been sentenced, the big question is what comes next? He's been in custody in Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center since September of 2024. And now, of course, he's sentenced to 4 years and 2 months in prison. Well, joining me now is Sam Mangle, a federal prison consultant who has worked with high-profile names from Steve Bannon to Peter Navarro, Sam Bankman-Fried. And we should note that he was not involved in this case, but we'll have some insight into what this is all about. Sam, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Deborah.
You've consulted other high-profile cases, as we say. What do you begin to advise? I mean, Seancombs has already been in jail for a year, but now he's going to federal prison. How do you begin to advise a client like him about what to prepare for?
I always tell clients, whether a politician, an actor, a billionaire client, or the run-of-the-mill businessman or doctor I deal with, it doesn't sink in until the judge reads the statement, "You are hereby remanded to the custody of the Bureau of Prisons for X number of months." And at that point, I explain at least most of my clients serve about 30% of that time in custody. It's a lot different for Seancombs because due to the nature of his charge, he's not eligible for any time off of his sentence other than the 15% good time credit that's given to every inmate. Between that and the time served, he's going to roughly be in custody for about 24 months before he's eligible for home confinement. So what I would tell him, and he's been in custody now for the past year, so he's very familiar with the Bureau of Prisons, he's going to be going to a much lighter security facility. He'll be going to a low security facility where he's going to be allowed outside from 6 in the morning to 9 o'clock at night, where he's going to be, typically not in a cell, but in dormitory style housing and much greater freedom. But depending upon where he goes, and I had the opportunity to work with the mother of 2 of his children a few years ago, and I spoke to her a few weeks ago specifically about where he's going. And where he goes will really dictate how he needs to assimilate and what type of programming might be available to him, really to keep him busy and make him more productive.
Yeah, and very quickly before I let you go, he was busy while he was in the jail awaiting trial. He taught a 6-week educational class. Very quickly, is that something that might impact the way he goes forward and maybe his release?
It won't affect his release because of the nature of his sentence. However, it will certainly keep him much more productive and occupy his time. And if he's able to teach other inmates, because inmates do teach other inmates in classes, he'll be held in a much higher regard from the case managers. Yeah. But again, due to the nature of his charge, there's really very little that he can do to affect when he will be released.
Well, a lot of folks will be following this, Sam. We really appreciate your insight. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Well, still ahead, from a witness backing out of her victim impact statement to the legal troubles still ahead for Combs, our legal team is here now to help us break it all down. And radio powerhouse personality Angela Yee is joining us to talk about what this case means to hip hop, the stain it leaves behind, and if the self-proclaimed bad boy can bounce back after prison time. Stay with us. Welcome back, everybody, and thanks so much for streaming with us. So the defense asked for no more than 14 months, and the prosecution had hoped to get 11 years for Seancombs, but ultimately the judge handing down a 50-month sentence in prison. Well, we want to break down what exactly happened in court. ABC's legal contributor, Brian Buckmeyer, who's a practicing defense lawyer, is with us to weigh in on the defense strategy, and Bernardo Villalona analyzing the prosecution side of things. So happy you both are here. Wow, we've been talking about this behind the scenes. We were waiting. This went on a very long time today. Bernardo, let me start with you. The big question is, who was the winner here? I mean, if there was a winner, Seancombs was clearly surprised, but the prosecution must have been disappointed.
Oh, absolutely. Today was definitely Judgment Day. So in terms of what happened today, you know, the judge definitely set out and told Sean Diddy Combs he's a bad boy for life. Ultimately, I think he still won. Sean Combs won because the prosecution did request those 11 years, and that's what they were asking for.
But they didn't get close to
I
that.
thought it was egregious, though, in terms of requesting the 11 years. But let's think about those 50 months. What those 50 months actually say. It still holds Sean Combs accountable for his actions. So it's still giving deterrence. It's still showing the seriousness of the crime. It's still protecting the public from Sean Combs, and it's still giving a voice to the voiceless. So while the prosecution, yes, they're upset, but it also have to look at it that, look, the conviction and the sentence shows that no matter how much money you have or how much power you have or whether you had the key to the city, that you can also be held accountable for your actions. And that's what we heard today.
That is what we heard. Brian, you mentioned all of these different acts that they actually talked about, that Sean had done good works and so forth. And the judge made it very clear that's not enough to erase the record. Brian, they did a lot today. All his 6 children testified. There was a video of Sean Combs showing him to be a really good father and all of that. Did that make a difference, do you think, with the judge? I think absolutely. And I think, Bernardo, see if you agree with me on this one. When we have cases in the Southern District of New York, the judge looks at that recommendation from probation and it's almost gospel. The judge says, hey, probation is the neutral arbiter here. They're saying 70 to 87 months. I understand the defense wants 14 months. You want him to walk out once he gets back to MDC. And the prosecution is asking for over 11 years. But to go 20 months below the probation guidelines, that, I think there's going to be a very serious conversation with Sean Combs and say, I know this feels bad. I know 50 months sounds like a lot, but when we met you, when we started opening statements, they were facing life, looking at life. When you were convicted, we beat the top counts. When we got the probation report, you were looking at 6 to 7 years. Now you got 50 months minus the 13 plus good time. He might be out in less than 3 years-ish, depending on how good he can be while incarcerated. Maybe keep doing those programs. A 3-year sentence afterwards, that's a win.
But it was a win. It was a win for the defense. You got to think, you know, there was some crying that was taking place, but I think what the judge wanted to say was cry me a river. So yes, I understand that you're a father and your kids love you and you've done great work. But hey, guess what? I watched this entire trial. I saw how Jane testified. I saw how Cassie testified. I saw how Cassie mentioned these dear and sad and emotional and traumatic moments that she'd had with all these different escorts in terms of drugs and alcohol. And he made sure, the judge, to emphasize this when he handed out his sentence, that we can't forget that yes, you've done a life of good work, but it doesn't change what you were doing behind closed doors.
Did the prosecution blow it for these victims? I mean, Cassie can't be really happy right now.
Well, the prosecution only has so much control, because after the verdict is in, you've lost your mandatory minimum when the jury found Sean Combs not guilty of racketeering conspiracy. Because had he been found guilty of racketeering conspiracy, we would have been talking about at least 20 years across the board, and Jesus wouldn't have been able to help you on that one. So they didn't blow it.
Okay, Brian.
I would say that they did blow it in 2 occasions. One, in overreaching in terms of the charges that they put against Sean Combs when it clearly didn't have the information for it. And I think also asking for 11 years as well just kind of made the judge says, you know, that's not a realistic number. I think if the prosecution came and said, you know what, the government, probation is asking for 70 to 87, and they came and just said, you know what, give him 95.
Right.
Just give him it would have been much more of a reasonable request. And I think they would have got much higher overall. So I think overreaching hurt them twice here.
I think a lot of folks are going to be debating this today. We could go on, but Bernardo and Brian, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it. All right, well, coming up, a popular radio host who knows the hip hop scene very well. She's going to talk to us about the cultural impact and what this sentencing means for the pop culture atmosphere. Angela Yee is going to be here. She's going to join me live, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Burden of Proof, the case against Diddy. Well, for decades, Seancombs has seemingly been on top of the world as one of hip-hop's most influential, wealthy figures, known for his work as a rapper, record producer, executive, building a vast business empire spanning from music into fashion, liquor, even a TV network. But what does this mean now that his criminal trial is over and he's been sentenced? What does it mean for Combs as the world once knew him? Well, let's bring in radio host Angela Yee. Angela, thank you for being here. You have been in this world surrounded by so many different people and come across Sean Combs over the years. We know that he was a powerful figure. It was acknowledged in court. What is this going to mean now in the community? What do you think people are saying?
Well, you know, Diddy was always the epitome of what it means to make it in the music business, the most successful, always on the top list when it comes to the most powerful entrepreneurs. So I think now he's going to have to redefine what that is. You know, I know we're looking to see what he's going to do when he finally gets released. I know he did not anticipate this happening. You can tell he had already set up some dates for things that he was going to do next week in Miami.
They said to teach and not to, do anything else, but that's what they
And he's been teaching behind bars too. And the judge even said, look, I hope you'll continue that work that you've been doing. So now it's going to be a full pivot. And I think he already was trying to make that pivot with the brother love and everything that he had reinvented himself with. And so I feel like he was already making that change because maybe he knew there's things from his past that he had to kind of account for.
Well, as I said, you had sort of been in his orbit over the years. You made it clear, never really good friends, but you had a popular radio show that was The Breakfast Club, which was on Diddy's network, Revolt TV. Give us a sense of what that was like in that world, because there were so many people who rubbed shoulders with him.
Yeah, you know, I think everybody looked up to Diddy. I mean, he was the person that was like the keynote speaker at this. He was the one that was like, okay, if you want to do a deal, if you want to make some money, that's the person you need to get next to. And so, you know, when it comes to clothing lines, when it comes to having his own network, we all were like, wow, this is amazing. Look at what this Black man is doing. And so now it's kind of like the blinds have been opened up and now we can see what was really going. But I also feel like there were always whispers of what was really happening. We've heard about the quote unquote freak offs and what happens at the parties after the actual like birthday party, what happens afterward, after hours.
And it exposed a lot of people to a world they didn't know about. You've described it, the hip hop world back then, as sort of the wild, wild west.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Oh, I mean that I think that a lot of times bad behavior was kind of par for the course. I mean, there's times when I first started in this music business, they told me I had to have tough skin. They told me there were going to be things that were happening that, you know, you have to learn how to be like a big girl and be okay with it. Even how people speak to you, how people treat you, being a woman in the business, you know, getting harassed was kind of like just part of what it was. And now I think, and I think this is fortunate that people have to be a lot more careful about how they talk to you, how they treat you, and what they do, because there has to be some type of accountability.
Things have changed for sure. Well, what about bouncing back from all of this? I mean, we've heard that Diddy has been teaching a course while he was in jail. Maybe he'll continue to in prison. He may only do another 2.5 or 3 years and then he comes out. Can he bounce back in some ways to reclaim where he was?
Listen, the way that Diddy is, I'm sure he's already planning what's next, like knowing him. And I think the way the landscape has changed, you don't need to have like a major network deal. You don't need to have a major label deal. There's a lot of things that people can do independently. And as we can see, people were already booking him to come and teach, so to speak, when he got out. So I can see already people are like free Diddy. Some people feel like he didn't get enough time, but I do feel like there's going to be people and there's going to be ways that he can monetize things, telling his own story, telling his own redemption, and not have to do a major corporation deal.
That's what I was thinking. If there's a movie, he will probably be involved in that production.
A documentary, him talking about how he's changed. I mean, even seeing like that video they put together in court to show his family and everybody coming together to support him. He's a master marketer.
Yeah.
And so he's managed to reinvent himself time and time again.
And he probably will again. Angela Yee, always great seeing you.
Good to see you too.
Okay, thanks so much for being here. Well, thank you for joining.
Well, that is the question that everybody wants to know. You know, did he get enough time? Was this justice? Was this judge bias? And, you know, the conversation is everywhere and everybody is in different areas of opinion as far as, was this judge bias? Did Diddy receive enough time? And what we got to understand is you got to stick with the crimes that he was convicted of and not kind of be overwhelmed with everything you heard, because as you guys are aware, he was not convicted of those other charges. Let's get into what Diddy's lawyers are saying, because they are not very happy about this at all.
We're hearing Diddy's attorneys speaking to the media after he was sentenced earlier today. This is live.
Yeah, we are planning to appeal.
Man, I want to hear them, bro.
We are planning to appeal. We think we have strong bases to appeal. The strongest basis is that the jury reached a verdict on coercion. It found there was not coercion, and I think the judge said coercion today as a basis for a sentence at least a dozen times. We think that that is unconstitutional. We think that a jury verdict should mean more than our jury's verdict seems to mean, and so we are planning to appeal.
Absolutely. Files a cross appeal. What would happen in that regard if they filed a cross appeal and then could 𝐤𝐮𝐬𝐽 get a higher sentence?
He would not get a higher sentence, and they're not gonna cross appeal. We're gonna appeal. We think we're right, and they'll respond to the appeal, and it'll be decided by the Second Circuit as soon as.
Tell us about the conversation you had with your client after the sentencing. Consensual. The judge clearly thought the sexual encounters weren't consensual.
Because he's
What did you
biased.
make of his remarks?
He's biased.
If anyone, I'm happy to go. So we think that's just absolutely inconsistent with the jury's verdict. I mean, the jury's verdict was resoundingly clear. There was no sex trafficking. There was no racketeering. Everything was consensual. Everything was adult, which is why he was convicted only of the prostitution offense. What we feel happened today was that the judge acted as a 13th juror, one that we did not choose, and that he second-guessed the jury's verdict.
Well, at least the judge was open-minded. At least the judge was open-minded for both sides. He gave consideration.
Did you have a chance to talk to Seancombs? Did you have a chance to talk to your client? Can you tell us about the conversation after the sentence?
How was he?
How's your client?
How would it impact sex workers?
But he's okay to push back a little. But he's okay to
Come on, man.
stop pushing people, y'all.
Y'all making it a circus now, bro.
Space out. He does feel justice was served, though. He said he takes accountability, and I felt like Diddy definitely took accountability for everything, sir. And I would like to just let you know that everything was not consensual, sir. Please don't say that. It was not consensual. Even Diddy
This is the
admitted
defense team,
that.
man. Let's answer the question.
Yes, but he did allegedly.
All right, Queen. All right, Queen. All right.
Mark, can you talk to us about talking to Sean after this?
So that's an easy little segue right there, as you can hear some reporters saying everything was not consensual. Again, the jury has spoken and people are wild in their thoughts. Once the jury has spoken, that is the basis for the charges. And it seems like the judge is still going off of what the charges that were presented. But if the man is found not guilty, you cannot keep calling it something that he wasn't convicted of. As you guys can hear somebody in the background saying it wasn't consensual. Well, based on what the jury decided, that is what they decided.
I'm not. Obviously, he spoke to Sean. I'm not going to talk about what Sean and we discussed. It's a privilege.
We all feel comfortable bringing.
And tell us what location are you going to recommend?
No matter which community it impacts.
What are the next steps?
Why weren't the sex workers on trial today? Hey,
Hold on, bro.
where were the escorts? Stop, bro.
Thank you, guys.
Here's the question. Here's what's next.
Yes.
Why weren't the escorts
that we're going to try and find the right facility for Mr. Combs. We're going to ask the judge to recommend that. We are very serious about pursuing an appeal. So we have a number of things all going on at the same time. I think that's all for
And you got
me.
about 14 days to start doing
If
that?
my colleagues
14
want to
days?
continue to ask questions.
Put that in motion.
Thank you, sir.
14 days to put that in
Thank
motion.
you, guys. Great job, guys.
Sean Diddy Combs' legal team, including.
And there you guys have it. The attorney for Combs is going to be filing an appeal. And in all honesty, I feel like they have a good basis. Just simple fact of some of the statements that the judge made. He's constantly bringing up coercion, and he was not convicted of that. So I think they have a very good case when, as it relates to the appeal. And I understand how, people for some reason just, hate Diddy. And I mean, they can feel that way. But unfortunately, when it comes to the law, you have to follow the law. And I feel like there was a bunch of emotions going on with this case and not enough following the law. Again, the man was found not guilty of those charges. And unfortunately, you have to follow the law. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments.
Too hot. Lakeyshakeysha, queen of the plot. Hit that bell, cause the